In this picture was when I was asked to give a prayer on behalf of the Jewish faith at the National Day of Prayer. Standing next to me is a Muslim chaplain of the U.S. Army who was present. And on the other side was the Archbishop of Washington. And the president in that picture, I'm not going to say the exact words, but he and I were discussing Jerusalem, Yerushalayim, which he had just proclaimed as the capital of Israel according to American law. And we were talking about that for a second. I'll just tell you a brief story, nothing to do with the president, but having to do with Islam, that will fascinate you. Many years ago, there was a man who went by the Rebbe, and the Rebbe gave him a bottle of vodka to support his efforts in working with Arab Muslim residents of his city. He lived in a very Arab city in Israel, and the Rebbe gave him this bottle. And he couldn't understand why did the Rebbe give him a bottle of vodka for something where he's working with Muslims. Because as you know, according to Islam, they're not supposed to drink alcohol, right? Apparently, that's not so straight in Islam. According to Islamic law, and this chaplain actually elucidated it for me, because while we were waiting in the holding room, I figured I'll ask him the question. When it comes to wine, they have no difference of opinion. But when it comes to bromfen, as we call it, whiskey or alcohol, then there's actually a machlokes amongst the imams about whether you're allowed to have a little bit, because it's not mentioned specifically as forbidden. So I understood many years later, and I was tipped off to this possibility by a dayan in Sydney named Rabbi Yoram Ullman, who said that an imam told him this might be possible. And then I found out that there's two schools of thought in Islam as to whether it's permitted. Not that they would encourage it, but many years later, almost 40 years later after the fact, it elucidated for me why the Rebbe would give this person vodka and not wine for a program he was working on with Muslims. So that's a story about that picture. If you have the other one there of President Trump, yeah, in this photo was a different year at an event signing, and one of my donors called me fuming about why would I shake hands with the president. And I said, when President Obama was president, I went to the White House for 8 years. My conservative friends didn't have an issue. He says, yeah, but the body language, you seem to be enjoying each other. And I said, if I tell you what the president said to me at that moment, because I remember it specifically, I think you might soften your position. He says, what could he possibly have told you? I said, he was asking me if his grandchildren behave in the synagogue. Honestly.
But that's a really special story, that he takes pride, I guess you're saying, in his grandchildren's Jewish identity and
absolutely. Yeah. I'll tell you, going to President Obama, you might notice that in front of my seat, I have a little brown booklet there, right?
Yeah.
Now, everybody came with their notes in their folder, but I'm oftentimes asked to wait, especially security, things take longer today. And somebody sends me a clip of this photo with a circle just like the one you made. And it has a Hebrew phrase of Kanireh Shedvar Malchus Oila al Shulchan Malachim. What is that brown book? That brown book contains a pamphlet that I use every day practically, but every week it has the quotas that we're supposed to study as Chabad in Chitas, Chumash, Tanya, and also Rambam and Sichas, and it's responsible for untold amounts of hours of Torah study by people like myself. In any event, it's printed on newsprint, which I didn't always think is the most presentable fashion to carry in rarefied quarters. So I had a leather binding made for it. And I was once sitting, by the way, in the Capitol waiting for an event to start, and a security guard walks over to me and he says, you've been coming here for years with that book. You ever going to finish that book? So I told him, this book never finishes, because we always get a new pamphlet every week of new Torah to study, which I insert into it. Now, so the president has that meeting, and thank God I had the opportunity to share with him a Dvar Torah, something from the Rebbe about the two sides of the menorah coming together, which was the theme of what he was talking to us about. But that theme, the quote from the Israeli paper of Dvar Malchus Oila al Shulchan Malachim means that the words of the royal words are fit for the table of a king. What does it mean, fit for a table of the king? You have a very similar thing with the London Beth Din and the Royal and Buckingham Palace. There are certain Jewish laws which are mandated by whether the food is a good enough or great enough food to be served on the table of royalty. And I recently, just a month ago, had one of the major kosher operations in America call and ask if I could call the White House chef and ask whether a certain food would ever be served at a state dinner. And I know that the London Beth Din started this practice when they would call the Buckingham Palace when they weren't sure and ask, would the Queen serve such a food at a royal banquet? So basically what the person was saying is the book of royal words is good for a royal table, which in America means, the president's conference table.